welcome in to our first edition of LHSAA 101. I am joined here today with the Executive Director, Ep.1 of the LHSAA. We're going to explain the practices and policies of the LHSAA today. In this first segment, we're looking back at how the split between select and non-select schools began. Mr. Bonine, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Let's take a look back at how those two split became a thing between select and non-select.
When it goes back to 2013, which was prior to me becoming the Executive Director, the principals across the state voted 206 to 119 to split the state. That would mean that the select schools included the private, the parochial, and some of the charter schools, while the non-select schools were traditional public schools. The idea was to create a balance for some schools and that had open enrollment and a broader attendance zones than others. And that's why it came down to what we did in 2013.
So the LHSAA administration did not make that decision?
No, that vote came directly from the principals. The administrative team here, we can make suggestions, but we don't have a vote when it comes to the convention. So it's all about the principals making that vote. They're doing what they need to do. Because this was a big issue, we have had some policy changes since my arrival in 2015, and now it takes 2/3 of a vote to pass a significant change like this. However, we have seen in the course of the last 10 years where specifically a classification, B and C, for example, they chose to reunite and eliminate the split in their participation. So we can make some changes in each respective classification, 5A, 4A, 3A, 2A, 1A. B and C, as I just said, have already done that. And in specifically not just in the class, but can do it in a sport. So we have other ways to do that now as well.
When you look back at this split, how has it helped, but what problems has it also created?
Well, it pleased the principals at the time because of the disadvantage they felt that they had, and as they progressed forward, it also created some challenges, and the challenges are now we have more championships. You know, specifically when we go to the Superdome or other places with the big venues, they became financially challenging for some of those classifications where they had the number of schools that were participating in the postseason, and it did produce that. But over time, this office, with the cooperation of our executive committee, which represents all of the schools across our state, have found a way to get a plan in place to address the select, non-select in the sports in which we have it now, which is obviously football, basketball, boys and girls basketball, baseball, and softball.
So in closing, the split came from member schools. It was a decision made by them aiming to really prioritize that balance and that fairness. And while it did solve some problems, it did in return create some new ones. In our next episode, we're going to take a look back at what happened in 2020 when schools tried to bring the system back together and why it didn't work. Mr. Bonine, thank you so much for joining me today for this edition.
Thank you.